Batman and Superman are one of the most iconic duos in all of comic books. What would happen if they were to take on another superhero pair, inspired by them? I'm talking about Apollo and the Midnighter. We're going to go over a brief overview of each character and then dive into how the battle would play out. If you enjoy the video, please consider subscribing. Now, let's jump into the breakdown. Batman has no powers of his own, but instead relies on his skills, gadgets, and intellect to overcome his adversaries. He is considered one of the top martial artists in the DC universe. Batman possesses no superpowers, yet he is in peak human condition by comic standards. He boasts incredible strength, stamina, and endurance, while maintaining an extraordinary intellect as the world's greatest detective. His main weapons are batarangs, grappling gun, and smoke pellets, but he has dozens of other gadgets in his utility belt. Batman refuses to break his rule of no killing, and instead uses non-lethal means to put down his villains. Superman has been given every power you can imagine at one point or another throughout his publication history. But we're going to stick with his standard power set. For the sake of everyone, we're going to forget this ever happened. Superman has the powers of flight, invulnerability, enhanced senses, super strength, super speed, heat vision, X-ray vision, and freeze breath. If all that wasn't enough, all of his abilities are basically top tier. The reason he doesn't defeat everyone within seconds, and actually even loses fights often, is because Superman purposely holds back. He doesn't want to accidentally kill or even permanently injure anyone, not even his enemies. This is a condensed list, but I feel these are the most often used across the years. Superman is powered by solar radiation from the sun, and his body acts like a battery, absorbing sunlight and turning it into his godlike powers. Next, I'm going to talk about Apollo. This is Superman. If he had no moral qualms with killing and civilian casualties. His powers are super strength, super speed, enhanced senses, flight, invulnerability, and heat vision. Apollo has been stated multiple times to be on the same power level as Superman by DC Comics. As his name suggests, Apollo also receives his powers from solar radiation, although to a more extreme extent. Sunlight not only gives him his powers, but it literally sustains his life force. Apollo has been trained in combat by his husband, the Midnighter, who we're just about to get into. Unlike Superman, Apollo does not hold back or limit his powers. Instead, he unleashes against his enemies with the full extent of his might. Now it's time for my favorite character from Wildstorm Comics, the Midnighter. Midnighter has been augmented with cybernetic implants that grant him all of his superhuman abilities. Midnighter's muscles have been replaced with carbon fiber, and he has an advanced battle computer. That is the ability that makes him nearly unstoppable in a combat scenario. Midnighter's battle computer, embedded in his brain, grants him a strategic advantage. It processes millions of combat scenarios, predicting his opponent's every possible move with astonishing accuracy. This allows him to adapt instantly, exploiting every weakness and countering attacks. Midnighter gets the luxury of choosing the outcome he wants, and the computer tells him what to do and what will happen next. Typically, Midnighter is presented with superhuman strength, speed, reflexes, and resilience. The character is shown moving faster than both the human and superhuman eye on multiple occasions. Midnighter is also in possession of a healing factor that has allowed him to rapidly recover from both having his heart ripped out, his neck snapped, and even being torn in two. And if all of that wasn't enough, he is also arguably the best hand-to-hand fighter in the entire DC universe. The reason I would boast such a feat is because he beat Prometheus in single combat, without having access to his battle computer. For those not familiar with Prometheus, he absorbed the fighting styles of the top 30 fighters on Earth, including Batman. Despite having a nearly unbeaten record, I should make it clear that Midnighter does have his limits. He can see an opponent's every attack, but it doesn't mean he can always block it. He can see their every weakness, but it doesn't mean he has the capability to exploit it. In other words, there are some scenarios where Midnighter just can't win. I think that's a decent enough coverage of the character's powers and abilities. It's time to give my opinion on how this battle would play out. Firstly, I think Apollo flies straight in to attack Superman. Having read every comic appearance of Apollo throughout his publication history, I can confidently say he literally flies headfirst into every situation. Superman would mostly be getting his face pummeled in the beginning, wanting to size up his opponent's strength and durability. This leaves Midnighter to face off against Batman, although this wouldn't last long. Batman throws smoke pellets and throws a scurry of batarangs towards Midnighter, who easily dodges the attack. The only thing on his mind is which of the dozens of scenarios to choose in which he kills his opponent. Batman would be killed the moment Midnighter made his decision. At the instant of Batman's death, Superman would hear his lack of heartbeat and know he has to unleash or risk dying like his friend. He lands a staggering blow to Apollo and races off towards the single heartbeat on the ground. Despite his hopes, it is Midnighter scowling up at him. Superman comes down with rage to strike Midnighter, who narrowly evades the attack. His battle computer scans Superman and instantaneously feeds every possible outcome into his brain. There is no way in hell Midnighter defeats an enraged Superman, especially with no cheats like kryptonite or plot devices. I feel it is obvious why Midnighter wouldn't be able to beat Superman, but I'm going to explain deeper why Apollo wouldn't win either. As I explained earlier, Superman and Apollo are on roughly the same power level and with similar abilities. The main difference in their powers is that Apollo burns out relatively fast compared to the Man of Steel. Apollo can fight for a few hours max if he is really cutting loose, while Superman's body processes the solar radiation much more efficiently, allowing him to outlast Apollo. Do you agree with my breakdown of this hypothetical comic book battle, or do you think I'm completely wrong? Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. See you next time.